The Galactic Council's voice rang clear across every broadcast channel in the known systems, a frequency so privileged, even presidents had to pause to listen. And so, by unanimous vote, we conclude that the species known as Homo sapiens, colloquially, humans, exhibit extreme aversion to warfare. Their capacity for empathy overwhelms strategic rationale. Thus, they are unfit for direct military roles within the high-order coalition. Then came the laughter. High, calculated, void of cruelty, just pity. Cold, academic pity? And then, without transition or warning, the broadcast cut to live footage, orbital scans of New Thessalonica, Earth's outermost colonial jewel, engulfed in flames. Coalition plasma rounds arced through the atmosphere like streaking comets. Civilians ran blind in the dark, gunned down not by war, but by a council's theory proven through blood. Gunnery Sergeant Elias Mercer didn't move. He stood inside the steel belly of the ED Raven, fists clenched, breathing slow. The glow of the holofeed shimmered off the surgical scars running down his forearms like cracked rivers. He said nothing. Behind him, Lieutenant Carr exhaled. This is sanctioned. Council approved. We're ordered to stand by. Elias turned, eyes unreadable. My niece lives there. Carr looked away. Mercer stepped closer, voice low. You think I give a damn what they voted? We have 3 drop pods, a stealth cloak, and 10 black howls itching for purpose. Tell me we're not about to remind them why they used to fear us. Carr hesitated. If you move without authorization, then it's mutiny, Elias snapped. But it's not treason if the government already sold us out. The lieutenant didn't stop him. The Black Howls weren't born Marines. They were forged, scraped from dishonor, exile, and the cracks in Earth's chain of command. Veterans of dirty wars the Council refused to acknowledge, each had one thing in common: they'd seen humanity's worst, and chose to protect it anyway. In the ship's drop bay, Sergeant Mercer stood before them. No speech. No orders. Just a recording. A girl's voice, maybe 6 years old, played from his wrist pad. Uncle Eli, look! I made this. Mommy says you're coming home soon. Can we get ice cream when you do? Silence followed. Even the grizzled Corporal Reyes blinked twice too fast. Elias killed the recording. New Thessalonica is burning. And we're the only bastards close enough to do something. Private Kim lifted her rifle. What about orders? We already got 'em. Elias tapped the red button on his chest. The armor hissed, sealed, and locked. A beat passed. Then every Marine punched in their combat seals, one by one. 10 minutes later, the UD Raven opened her belly to space. 3 black drop pods streaked into orbit like falling knives, cloaked against every sensor net the Coalition relied on. Inside, Elias leaned forward in zero-G, sweat dotting his brow despite the sub-zero pod interior. I hate space jumps, muttered Private Voss, his boots clanking against the walls with every vibration. Mercer smirked. You're a Marine, Voss. You hate everything. Except C-rations. Reyes grinned. The man's a freak. The pod rocked hard, atmospheric entry. Fire blazed against the viewport. Brace, Elias barked. They hit dirt with bone-jarring force. They emerged into chaos. The colony center was a scorched grid of collapsed towers and broken lives. Screams echoed from alleys, cut short by bursts of foreign weapons. Coalition troopers, insected frames beneath shimmering cloaks, moved with clinical precision, neutralizing resistance without anger or cruelty. Just math. Elias raised his rifle. We break their algorithm. What's the plan? Reyes asked. We go unscripted. And they did. Mercer's squad didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like predators. Trapdoors. Ambushes. Streetlights rigged to explode. Neural jammers broadcasting random emotional signals to short-circuit the Coalition's behavioral reads. The aliens adapted. So did the Howls, faster, dirtier. They found pockets of survivors. A wounded mother shielding her children in a bakery freezer. A xeno merchant from the Kathari Empire holding off Coalition drones with a broomstick. 2 medtech students administering morphine in a burning library. Elias saw them all, catalogued every act of defiance, and burned it into memory. Because someone had to testify. They took shelter in an abandoned monorail terminal, setting up defensive perimeters. Private Kim patched up a child with glass in his thigh. "Why didn't they send help?" the boy whispered, voice trembling. Elias knelt. "They thought we'd surrender." The child frowned. "Will we?" Mercer handed him a chocolate ration bar. "Kid," he said, "we're Marines." The boy smiled through tears. As night fell on New Thessalonica, the coalition grew cautious. Their algorithms flagged anomalies, patterns they couldn't map. Back aboard the Council's flagship, Primarch Veilthaz watched the metrics shift with interest. Unexpected resistance. Uncalculated emotion. Human elements, variable. He tapped his console. Deploy Vanguard reinforcements. Begin Phase 2 suppression. His voice lacked emotion. But deep down, buried beneath the algorithms and data, he felt something stir. Something like apprehension. Rain fell like sizzling glass, the chemical downpour stinging exposed skin and corroding what little shelter remained. Black howls moved through the ruins of New Thessalonica like phantoms, clad in soot-covered armor and silent purpose. Their helmets filtered the acrid air, but nothing could filter the smell: burnt plastic, singed metal, and the sharp, coppery stench of blood. Sergeant Elias Mercer crouched beneath the shattered frame of an old monorail bridge, eyes locked on a coalition patrol methodically sweeping a civilian checkpoint. They weren't searching for resistance. They were collecting biometric data, tagging survivors like livestock. "Elias," came a whisper over comms, Private Kim. "They've got drones overhead. Thermal scans sweeping every 15 seconds. We're gonna lose our window." Mercer didn't respond immediately. He was watching a young girl, a Kahari, maybe 7 cycles old, get separated from her parents and forced into a scanner pod. Her scream didn't make it past the glass. He exhaled through his nose. "How many civilians in the zone?" 17. Maybe 20. Plus 3 refugees, 1 wounded. He turned to Reyes and Voss beside him. "Shock and scatter. EMP javelin followed by flash bangs. We retrieve, then fade." "Non-lethal?" Reyes asked, loading a slug round with a grimace. "Only if they're smart enough to stand down." The strike lasted 17 seconds. The EMP ripped through the scanner pod like lightning through a circuit board. Coalition units scattered in disarray as the house stormed in, merciless, precise, and completely off-script. Mercer fired first, a round that split a drone in half. Kim vaulted the barricade and pulled the child free, covering her with her own body as flash bangs detonated around them. One coalition officer tried to counter with a dissonance emitter, a weapon designed to overload human emotion centers. Mercer shot at mid-charge, then slammed the butt of his rifle into the officer's faceplate, cracking chitin and sending the being sprawling. "Fall back, Route Green!" he shouted, lifting a screaming refugee into his arms. They melted into the alleyways before backup arrived. The hulls regrouped in a drainage hub below the old cargo depot. The civilians were shaken, bleeding, but alive. "That's the 3rd camp we've hit today," Kim said, stripping off her helmet. Her cheeks were streaked with sweat and grime, her knuckles raw. Mercer handed the Qatari child a protein bar. "And it won't be the last." Reyes checked his rifle, then looked up. "You think Command's seen the footage yet?" "Probably," Elias said. "But the real question is, will they admit it's us?" Silence fell. Voss leaned against the wall, wiping soot from his visor. "We keep pulling this crap, they'll label us terrorists." "We're Marines," Elias snapped. "We didn't start this. The Council did. The brass just didn't have the spine to say no." A faint tone buzzed in his earpiece, encrypted channel. He tapped it. "Mercer," a voice replied, rough and clipped. "This is Captain Barlow. Former Command, Ghost Division. We're watching your operation." "Good work." Mercer stiffened. "You're monitoring us? You lit up half the sky, Sergeant." Some of us still remember what Semper Fi means. Elias hesitated. Then help us. Can't. Not officially. But we're leaking intel. Expect an enemy push by dawn. Full vanguard sweep. The line went dead. The storm thickened. Thunder rolled in low pulses, vibrating through the concrete bones of the city. Mercer stood atop a collapsed skyway, surveying the skyline through infrared lenses. Coalition airships hovered like silent leviathans over the colony, methodical in their dread. Below, floodlights ignited. Search drones flitted between buildings, scanning for thermal traces. What are we looking at? Kim asked, climbing up beside him. They're changing tactics. This isn't about securing territory anymore. Then what? Erasure. She went quiet. Later that night, Mercer gathered the team. They're deploying vanguards, full suppression units. Predictive tactics, assault algorithms, no regard for collateral. Voss frowned. You're saying they're just going to wipe us off the grid? No. I'm saying they're going to make sure no one remembers we were here. Kim leaned forward. What's the plan? Mercer paced. We turn the equation on its head. Broadcast every rescue, every encounter, every child we pull out alive. Force the council to face the war it approved. Live feed? Reyes raised an eyebrow. Won't they jam it? We don't use their channels. We use emotion. At dawn, the Howls initiated a new strategy. With scavenge tech and hybrid uplinks, they began transmitting bursts of footage, unfiltered, raw, human. A medic crying as she reattached a cut Hari boy's prosthetic. A marine shielding an injured alien with his own body. Elias hugging a child who thought her family was dead. They didn't send combat stats or kill counts. They sent truth. And the galaxy began to watch. The coalition noticed. Primarch Veilthaz stared at the reports, mandibles twitching. Humans broadcasting trauma? Risking strategic integrity for moral optics? His lieutenant bowed. Shall we deploy silent squads? No. We adapt. He turned toward the viewport. They believe their empathy is power. Let us show them what happens when that becomes their greatest weakness. He activated the override. Begin psychic warfare protocols. Elias Mercer hadn't slept in 30 hours, but it didn't show. Not in his eyes, not in his gait. What exhaustion couldn't claim, duty fortified. He paced the shattered floor of the makeshift command center. An abandoned subway terminal turned into a web of fiber cables, field medkits, and jury-rigged transmitters. Above him, war roared like a living thing. Coalition vanguard units had escalated. No longer probing. Now purging. Private Kim scanned the feed from an aerial recon drone. They're closing in. 4 clicks out, wedge formation. Not infantry, no heartbeats. These are synthetic. Mercer leaned in. Drones? Kim shook her head. Worse. Neurophages. Reyes let out a low whistle. They're gonna bleed us dry before they fire a shot. Mercer's jaw tensed. Neurophages didn't kill with weapons. They overwhelmed minds, dredged trauma from neural cores, amplified guilt, panic, hopelessness. A tactical psychic assault disguised as mercy. We fall back? Voss asked. No, Mercer replied, voice flat. We make them regret sending machines to feel for them. The Howls prepared, but not with guns. They sealed helmets, rerouted neural pathways through field inhibitors, and dosed each other with fast-acting emotional suppressants, experimental stims meant for riot control, not war zones. The civilians huddled in the depths of the shelter, unaware that just above them, the true battle was about to begin, and not one waged with bullets. The storm hit at 0400. It came as a pulse, silent and invisible, like a memory slipping through a dream. Elias staggered. His vision blurred, not from pain, but from remembrance. He saw a burning village. His own hands shaking as he cradled a dying boy. Orders ignored. Lives saved. Careers shattered. He blinked, forcing breath into his lungs. Kim screamed beside him, her rifle clattering to the ground as images clawed at her mind. Her sister, the hospital, the flatline tone she'd never heard in person but always heard in dreams. "Eyes on me!" Mercer bellowed. His voice grounded them like an anchor thrown into a storm. He activated the dampeners strapped to their chests, crude but effective. Each shock slammed the past back into its coffin. "Neurophages can't fight what we've already made peace with," he growled. "They weaponize regret. We counter with defiance." Reyes, teeth clenched, shouted, "Then why does it still hurt?" Mercer looked him dead in the eyes. "Because we're not dead inside like they are." They adapted fast. The howls switched from defense to guerrilla strikes, not at the vanguards themselves, but at their relay hubs, those delicate pylons buried in rooftops and ruins. Each one transmitted amplified feedback loops into human cortexes, and each one died in a shower of thermite and shrapnel. In between the chaos, they still found people. A blind woman clinging to a child. A refugee cooked boiling water over a scavenged reactor. A boy writing his parents' names in the dirt, not knowing they'd died 2 days ago. "Why save them?" Voss asked after a narrow escape. "We can't win. We're just delaying the inevitable." Mercer paused, looking at the soot-covered child in his arms. "Because if we don't, they're not people anymore. They're just numbers on a council report. We fight to prove that every life still matters." That night, the coalition changed tactics again. The skies turned amber. A steady hum vibrated through the city's bones, subharmonics tuned to disrupt REM cycles. It wasn't designed to kill. It was designed to wear down the will. And it worked. Even Elias, so composed, so endlessly defiant, found himself at the edge. In the quiet between attacks, he sat alone near a collapsed stairwell. His armor stripped to the waist, his dog tags dangling against his chest, he stared at a cracked hollow image of a smiling girl, his niece. Her voice didn't play anymore. The data was corrupted. He remembered the day she was born. The first time she called him Uncle Eli. The promise he made to keep her safe, no matter what. He clenched the image until his knuckles blanched. "I can't promise safety," he murmured, barely audible. "But I'll give them fear instead." At dawn, they made a choice. No more retreats. No more waiting to be hunted. They would strike the coalition's command post, a fortified hub in the heart of the sector, guarded by death machines and flanked by surveillance arrays. Mercer gathered the team. "We hit them before their new wave arrives," he said. "Kim and Voss take the back line. Plant scramblers. Reyes with me through the front. Loud, stupid, and violent. Draw them out." "And the fallback?" Kim asked. He looked away. "There isn't one." They all understood. No one argued. Because they were Marines. And this is what Marines do. They launched at first light. The coalition, arrogant in its precision, didn't expect chaos. The black howls brought it in waves, EMP bursts, decoy flares, auditory scramblers screaming with the sounds of crying children and laughter, designed to confuse enemy targeting algorithms. Elias moved like a storm-given human shape, one arm cradling a heavy blaster, the other dragging Reyes through a collapsing tunnel after he took a shot to the side. Go without me," Reyes groaned. Mercer tightened his grip. "You're not a name on a wall yet." Above them, the uplink tower shattered in a cascade of blue fire. The feed went dark. Across the galaxy, millions stopped scrolling. The pirated stream froze on Elias's bloodied face, standing over a burning coalition banner. The message below read, "We are still here. And we remember everything." The sky above New Thessalonica was silent, eerily so. No gunships. No search drones. No thunder from collapsing towers. Only the low, humming tension of anticipation, like the last breath before a blade fell. Inside the ruins of the Coalition uplink tower, Elias Mercer crouched beside a dying fire, wrapping Reyes's shoulder with gauze pulled from the last field kit. Blood still soaked through. "You need evac," Reyes rasped. "We don't have evac." Reyes coughed out a bitter chuckle. "Then what's left?" Elias glanced out the shattered window at the broken skyline. One message. One move they'll never forget. Across the city, the coalition was reorganizing. The psychological assault had failed. Human resistance hadn't fractured, it had crystallized. Emotion, their perceived flaw, had become their shield. On the orbiting council vessel Sanctum Spire, Primarch Veilthas stared at the final casualty reports. Not in disbelief, aliens of his rank didn't allow disbelief. But calculation faltered now. How? His advisor murmured. They lost the majority of their forces. Their infrastructure is decimated. Veilthas stared at the screen. Images of Marines tending to refugees. Humans shielding alien civilians. Broadcasts showing mercy and madness side by side. They endured, he whispered. Not because they're immune to pain, but because they choose it. Elias walked alone into the war zone's heart. His armor was scarred. His left gauntlet missing. His rifle holstered, untouched. Slung across his shoulder was something else, a transmitter rigged from a comms core and a hacked civilian repeater. A broadcast beacon. Behind him, Reyes lay in hiding. Kim and Voss had slipped into the underground tunnels with the last convoy of survivors. Elias had insisted they go. Someone had to live. He walked into the plaza, where the Coalition's Central Command node now stood. Drones floated above like vultures. Energy turrets tracked his movements. Still, he walked forward. In the Coalition Command Chamber, Veilthas leaned forward as a red icon pulsed on his display. Human detected, the AI confirmed. Unarmed. Broadcasting signal. Let it through, the Primarch ordered. Risk counter-propaganda. Let it through. The screen lit up with static. Then, Elias's face. Dust-streaked. Bleeding. Alive. This is Gunnery Sergeant Elias Mercer of the Black Howls, he said, voice raw but clear. You told the galaxy we were afraid of war. You said we weren't fit to fight. That we lacked discipline, control, logic. He inhaled, shoulders rising with the effort. But logic doesn't carry children through burning streets. Control doesn't make a man take a bullet for someone he's never met. And fear? Fear's the reason we keep fighting after everything's lost. Fear teaches us what matters. He took a step forward. You think we don't understand war? We hate it. That's why we're good at it. Because when we fight, it's not to conquer. It's to protect. On 1,000 worlds, the broadcasts crackled to life. Civilians paused in refugee centers. Soldiers on silent battlefields stopped mid-march. Council members leaned forward in darkened chambers. They watched a lone Marine, bloodied but unbroken, speak not of victory, but of meaning. I'm not here to win, Elias said, gaze hard. I'm here to remember. And make sure you remember too. He reached into his pouch and held up a child's drawing, creased, soot-stained, fragile. It showed Earth. A little girl. A man in uniform holding her hand. This is what you tried to erase. The Coalition Command issued a firing directive. Turrets locked on. Elias dropped the picture gently at his feet. Then he smiled. And whispered, Semper Fi. A flash. Silence. Then, the beacon lit up again. Not with Elias's voice, but with the feeds he'd prepared. Every rescue. Every moment of defiance. The truth. Transmitted across systems, beyond council censorship, unstoppable now. Elias Mercer was gone. But his message had teeth. 3 days later, the Galactic Council held an emergency assembly. Unprecedented. Watched by trillions. The attack on New Thessalonica was declared a violation of ethical conduct. Reparations were issued. Coalition military aggression was suspended for re-evaluation. But more importantly, Earth was no longer viewed as a liability. It was feared. And respected. Not for its weapons. Not for its numbers. But for its will. Back on the colony, survivors rebuilt. Kim and Voss constructed a memorial near the site where Elias fell. At its center stood a bronze figure, eyes forward, helmet tucked beneath one arm. In the other hand, a crumpled child's drawing. The plaque read, "He didn't come here to conquer. He came to remind them who we are." Across the galaxy, a whisper passed from world to world. "The humans don't fear war. They fear what happens when they don't fight."